Hello, hello, hello. What is going on, everybody? Happy Wednesday, and welcome to the Astro Room, where we talk about everything astrology and spirituality. I am your host and your favorite astrologer, Mel of Divine Feminine Works, where I help people unlock their divinity and discover their magic. So, if you are new to the channel, welcome. And as always, if you are returning, welcome back. So, this channel is everything tarot, astrology, spirituality, and manifestation. So, if those are the things you like, if those are the things you love, if those are the things you want to learn more about, don't forget to hit that subscribe button as well as that notification bell so you always be notified when I come out with new content. All right, my love. So this is going to be the weekly astro forecast for the week of May 1st through May 7th, 2023. All right, my loves, happy May. So this is not a new night. It's just that this week there was a bit of technical difficulties. Mercury retrograde was doing its thing. Plus the energy of this eclipse. I don't know about you, but it has me very tired. I feel like I've been sleeping a lot more. I've been a lot more lethargic. Given what's going on in the cosmos right now, I think a lot of us are doing healing. A lot of us are addressing some things. So that tends to take a toll on the physical body as well as the emotional body. So if you're feeling a little drowsy, a little lethargic, kind of like you're dragging your ass this week, won't last for too much longer because we're going to end the week on a major note with the eclipse, and then we will be done with eclipse season for now. All right. So lots going on this week, a lot of major energy shifts, a lot of revelations. So, it's going to be an interesting broadcast this evening. All right. So before we get into the nitty gritty, as always, well, first, let's let the good people over on Twitter know that we are live so that they can come and join us. And of course, before we get into the nitty gritty, housekeeping and some announcements. So if you are joining me here right now on the live, thank you so much for tuning in. I truly appreciate it. Don't forget to say hi on your way in and hit that like button as well. Please and thank you. And if you are watching this on the replay, thank you so much for tuning in as well. I truly appreciate you as well. All right. And also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and that notification bell, as well as the like button while you're hitting all those different buttons. All right. I appreciate it more than you know. All right. So let's see if there are any announcements for this week. Not really. Everything's sort of as normal as it can be, considering, what's going on right now. But trying to get back into business as usual. Like I said, I had a little technical difficulties on Monday. But rest assured, next week we will be back on our regular schedule with the weekly astro forecast on Monday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All right. So if you are someone who wants to know what's going on, if you are someone who is curious about what the week looks like for you, consider texting ZODIAC to 855-826-5544. That is my text service where I text out the weekly horoscopes every Monday morning. All right. People seem to really like it. So if you want something that's quick, to the point, and very relevant to you, definitely consider signing up for that. Again, that's going to be texting the word ZODIAC to 855-826-5544. And that information will be in the description box below. All right. And as always, if you are someone who is new to astrology, like brand spanking new, and you have absolutely no idea what's going on, you hear all of these terms, you kind of get what's going on, but you don't. Or even if you've been studying astrology, but you find that it's a lot, right? There are a lot of different terms, a lot of things to sort of commit to memory. I've got you covered. I created this thing called the Astrology Basics Cheat Sheet, which basically gives you the quick and dirty on everything you need to know to start studying astrology, mainly the 4 pillars of astrology, which are the planets, the houses, the zodiac signs, and the aspects. All right. It's an 11-page PDF document that just gives you the quick and dirty on everything that you need to know to start studying so that you can start committing these things to memory, because regardless of what anyone may tell you, astrology is definitely a science. And like any good science, it requires a good deal of study. So this cheat sheet is to help you get started, right, on your studying journey. So if you're interested in getting that, the link to that will be in the description box below. You just have to drop your email address and you will be good to go. All right. All right. So that is everything by way of housekeeping and announcements. So let us chat. Let's chat. Well, first, let's see who we have in the house this evening. So far, we've got Philip Boone and we've got Hollow. What's going on? Thank you so much for tuning in. All right. So eclipse season. It's eclipse season, it's Mercury retrograde, and it's Pluto retrograde. So just the sound of all of that sounds overwhelming, right? And to a certain extent, it can be. However, I don't want you to get caught up in any of the fear mongering or the world is coming to an end kind of rhetoric that's going on right now, because although this is intense energy, like I'm not going to lie to you, this is intense energy, it all works in tandem. And most importantly, it works for your highest good if you will allow it to. Okay. So, yes, it may feel a little overwhelming this week. It may feel a little heavy. It may feel a little emotional. You may be thinking about things you haven't thought about in a while. There may be people showing up in your life, for better or for worse, who you haven't spoken to in a minute. Old wounds may be resurfacing, okay? Or you just may feel this energy of wanting a change. Maybe you're sick and tired of being sick and tired. And you're like, right now, like you're at your breaking point. And you're just like, I need a change. I need to do something different. I don't want to live this way anymore, right? All of that is perfectly valid. And all of that is very much in alignment with the current astrology. Because like I said, we're in the midst of eclipse season. So about 2 weeks ago, we had a solar eclipse in Aries, which packed a powerful punch. And then this week, we've got a lunar eclipse in Scorpio, which is having us diving deep into the recesses of our minds and of our emotions, okay? Then we've got Mercury retrograde, which is, the typical Mercury retrograde stuff. However, it's very much about inner reflection, especially when it comes to things like self-esteem, self-worth, maybe even money issues. So many of us may be grappling with some pretty sensitive topics right now. Many of us may find ourselves being triggered by certain things. Then we've got Pluto that just went retrograde as well. So it's this energy of really taking a look within, right? Mercury retrograde is sort of it's inward focus, but it's very much our conscious mind, right? It's our thoughts. It's, very superficial level stuff. However, with Pluto retrograde, this is going deep. This is going real deep. This is the subconscious. This is your inner world that you are exploring, or that you have the ability to explore in a very profound way with Pluto retrograde. So a lot of inward looking. And one of the things that I love about astrology and how it ties into spirituality is that it shows us that there are moments in life where we are meant to be looking forward, moving forward, or directing our consciousness forward, right? This is when planets are going direct. However, every single planet, aside from the sun and the moon, goes retrograde at some point. And it symbolizes the fact that at times we have to take some steps back. We have to look inward. We have to stop going, and really recalibrate or reassess or just rest sometimes, right? And so that's what retrograde season is really about. And what's interesting about this particular retrograde season, and by this retrograde season, I mean Pluto and Mercury that are currently retrograde, kind of smack dab in the middle of, this spring eclipse season, is that not only are we going in, but we are sort of being urged to rest and, most importantly, surrender. Eclipse season, and I'm sure if you've watched any of my other lives, if you are, an OG veteran to this channel, you will know that I always say that eclipse season is the universe's way of rearranging things in our lives. We co-create with the universe, with God, with source, whatever you want to call it. And so as much as we feel like we are in control of things, right? Because we live in this 3D reality, we are in these physical bodies. So we feel like many times to get what we need or to fix what's broken, we have to do it ourselves, right? We have to take control of the situation and physically do something or take some sort of action, right? That's not always the case. And this sort of ties into what I was just saying, that retrograde season is a time to rest, relax. And eclipse season is time to surrender. And it reminds us that we co-create with the universe. So at a certain point, the universe is like, listen, you've done your part. Chill out for a little bit and let me put my hand in this. Let me work this out for you. Okay. But here's the thing, during eclipse season, it doesn't necessarily feel that way, right? And I don't mean to be like flippant in my descriptions. I feel like I'm just trying to explain this in a way that sort of makes sense. Eclipse season, a lot of things can happen unexpectedly. I know this particular eclipse season, I have to say, has not been extremely jarring, at least for me personally. I've had some eclipse seasons where some wild shit has happened. When I say wild, I say out of left field, crazy, life-shattering things. And maybe that is the case for you in this one. And if it is, understand that nothing lasts forever. And again, things are being rearranged. Think about like, you ever have a situation where you're like rearranging a room? Like, let's say you have your bedroom and you want to rearrange the furniture. Okay. You decide that you want to move the bed away from the window. You want to make it a nice little cozy moment. And so you decide to rearrange the furniture. You ever realize that when you're rearranging stuff, you kind of create a bigger mess before everything gets into place? It's like you got to take everything out of its place, move things around, and then put things back into place. That's how eclipses can feel to us. In the moment, and by moment, I mean the day of the eclipse or like 3 days before, 3 days after, it can feel like a complete mess, or it can feel like you are in the eye of the storm, or it can feel like things are upside down in your life, but that's because things are being rearranged. And so this is why in ancient times, people were often afraid of eclipses, because they bring chaos. But what I want you to understand and what I want you to remember is that chaos breeds creation. You cannot have creation without chaos, okay? And so this is a very creative time where we are urged to take a seat. Some of us need to take several seats, if I'm being honest, and allow the universe to create for us, to work in tandem with us, but having the universe do the heavy lifting. So again, it may be a time that feels tumultuous, but it's ultimately getting you to where you need to go. All right. And we are nearing the end of a particular eclipse cycle. And I'm going to get more into this when I talk about the eclipse specifically. But in the meantime, before I get to it, I want you to keep in the forefront of your mind what was going on at the end of 2021, specifically November, December. Around that time, something started, okay? It may have been an ending followed by a new beginning, or it may have just been something that popped up and that signified a new cycle, a new beginning of some sort. That story has been playing out slowly but surely since the end of 2021. And we're at one of the final chapters now at this eclipse in Scorpio. And the final chapter, when we're going to ready to sign on the dotted line and close that book, at least for the foreseeable future, is going to be happening in October. So again, until I get into the nitty gritty of this particular eclipse, I want you to keep that in the forefront of your mind, because as I'm explaining what's going on with the eclipse, I want you to realize how this particular story has been playing out for you and what it's meant. And most of all, what it has shown you about you, yourself, your circumstances, and your relationships. All right. So keep that in the forefront of your minds. All right. So with that being said, let's get into it and see what we've got going on for the week. Okay. So by way of highlights, the first thing we got going on is what I like to call backtracking. And this is Pluto going retrograde in Aquarius. Now, currently, Pluto is straddling the line between Aquarius and Capricorn. So during this month of May, Pluto is going to be going retrograde, but it's still going to be in Aquarius. But then come next month, June, Pluto is going to make its way back into Capricorn. All right. So we're feeling this Saturnian, this very Uranian, this Capricorn and Aquarius energy with respect to Pluto. Okay. And so again, Pluto retrograde, it's all about having that energy of Pluto, which is the energy of transformation, rebirth, regeneration, and we're directing it inward. Okay. So this is like the phoenix rising from the ashes moment. Okay. This can be pretty profound, but it's not something that's going to happen in one day. This is something that's going to work itself out over time. All right. But I'll get more into that in a little bit. All right. The next up, we have what I like to call truth revealed. And this is the lunar eclipse in Scorpio. Now, Scorpio, one of the characteristics of Scorpio energy is the fact that it is the truth seeker. It wants to get down to the very bottom, the very truth, the very core of a matter, no matter how dirty, no matter how nasty, no matter how hurtful, right? And so truths are going to definitely be revealed. I feel like a lot of us, myself included, are experiencing some aha moments or are experiencing some enlightenment and clarity about certain things. Remember, I said, we are in the final chapters of this particular story that's been playing out since 2021. And so I feel like this eclipse is going to show us why this situation has been happening, or the desires, the motivations, the inner workings of this story, I think are going to be revealed to us during this eclipse. So it's definitely going to be good stuff. All right. And then finally, we have what I like to call love and devotion. So we end this week and begin next week on a very sweet note because Venus is going to be entering Cancer. And this is very nurturing, protecting, loving, and devoted energy that's going to be available to us. Okay, so keep in mind that relationships with Venus in Cancer, relationships get very touchy-feely and very emotional. So we may be in for a very emotional couple of weeks while Venus is in the emotional sign of Cancer. But anyway, in any event, that is how we end the week and start next week. And speaking of the week, let's get into the week and see what we've got going on. So on Monday, we had Sun conjunct Mercury, which was a very auspicious and fortunate transit, which I'll get into in a second. And we have Pluto going retrograde in Aquarius. Then yesterday on Tuesday, we had the moon moving into Libra. On Thursday, we will have Venus square Neptune and the moon will be moving into Scorpio. And then Friday, you're going to want to put a gold star next to Friday because not only do we have the lunar eclipse going down on Friday, but we have a very fortunate and auspicious transit with Venus sextile Jupiter. Okay, so Friday is going to be an interesting day to say the least. Then on Saturday, we have the moon moving into Sagittarius. And then on Sunday, like I mentioned before, we've got Venus moving into Cancer. All right, so without further ado, let's jump in and talk about it day by day. All right, my loves. So as I mentioned before, on Monday, we had Pluto going retrograde, and you will see that at the right-hand portion of the chart, Pluto is currently at 0 degrees Aquarius. And just by way of technical astrology stuff, whenever you are looking at a chart and you see the planet glyph, right? Look at that red circle at the right-hand portion of the chart. You'll see that planetary glyph and the numbers. If the numbers are black in color, that means that the planet is moving forward. If the numbers are red in color, that means that the planet is retrograde. Okay. So just tidbit of information. So like I said, we got Pluto retrograde, and then we had the Sun conjunct Mercury. Both of those were at 11 degrees Taurus, and you'll see that at the upper, I guess, left-hand portion of the chart, if you want to say that. All right, so let's get into it. So first, let's talk about Sun conjunct Mercury, okay? And so this transit happens, I want to say, every other month or maybe every 2 months at most. Mercury is the fastest moving planet, and it's always the planet that is closest to the sun. So Mercury and the sun tend to meet up a lot. And when they do, not only is it called a conjunction, but there's a specific degree that Mercury will get to in relation to the sun, and that is known as cazimi. Anytime a planet gets too close to the sun, the sun is super hot. So when a planet gets too close to the sun, the energy of that planet sort of gets overshadowed by the heat and the fire of the sun. When the planet reaches a sweet spot, which is 17 arcs of a second, I'm not even going to go into what that means. But regardless, when a planet reaches that degree in relation to the sun, it's where the planet can still exude its energy without getting overpowered by the sun. And it's thought of since ancient times to be a very fortunate and auspicious place for that planet to be. And so the energies of that planet tend to exude themselves very positive energy. So if we're talking about Mercury, Mercury is all about thoughts and communications. So think back to Monday. Maybe you got some really good advice. Maybe you got some really good news. Maybe you learned something that's very valuable that you could use in the future. Okay. Regardless of it being an auspicious kind of day, it puts the focus on your thinking and communications. It's almost like the energy of the sun sort of energizes your thoughts and communications. So you may have found that things have been a little busier on Monday. You may have had clarity of thoughts. Because both planets are in the sign of Taurus, this may have been situations regarding money or finances that became clear or that became ignited, okay? It could be a situation where something that may have been dormant before in terms of money became re-energized as the sun conjuncted Mercury on Monday. So keep that in mind. There may have been a financial plan. There may have been a financial situation that got re-energized this week for you. Okay. So also may have been a time where things concerning work got re-energized or got a boost of energy. Okay. This also lends itself to mental alertness, quick thinking, adaptability, and curiosity. But regardless, it's a good time to communicate with people, to learn different things, and to receive information. Okay. So think back to Monday. Think about what kind of day it was. Whether it was busy, again, whether you got some good news, you learned something that was important or valuable. Any of those things could have happened with the sun conjunct Mercury. All right. And then the star of the show was Pluto going retrograde in Aquarius. Okay. So this, like I said before, Pluto retrograde is about taking an introspective look on a very deep level. So whenever Pluto is direct, the energy of transformation, of death, of rebirth is expressed outwardly. So when Pluto is direct, we tend to see a lot of these things play out in society because Pluto is what is known as a generational planet. Because it is so far away from the sun, it doesn't necessarily affect us personally. It affects us more as a society, specifically as different groups of society. Another tidbit of information. I'm sure you're familiar with the boomers, the millennials, Gen Z, and whatever they're calling these new babies right now. These are all different generations, right? Generations, the categories of generations follow the transit of Pluto in the different signs. So boomers typically are people who have Pluto in Leo or Virgo. Maybe not, I would say Leo. Gen X is people that typically have Pluto in Virgo. Millennials are people who tend to have Pluto in Libra or Scorpio. And Gen Z are people who have Pluto in Scorpio or Sagittarius. Okay, so those generations really follow the transit of Pluto through the signs. So again, another tidbit of information. But in any event, when Pluto is retrograde, that energy of transformation, that energy of change, profound change, we direct that inward. So like I said earlier in the broadcast, you may be feeling like you're at your breaking point right now. You may be feeling like it's so time for a change. I need to do something different at this time. Pluto retrograde is the perfect time to make lasting and profound change, okay? With Pluto in Aquarius, Aquarius is a very future-oriented sign. So any changes that you endeavor to make right now are really geared toward having a different and a profoundly different future. Okay, this is about changing the way you think. It's about changing your relationships with people in order to change the future. Okay, and Pluto is one of the ruling planets for Scorpio. And the symbolism for Scorpio is the phoenix, specifically the phoenix rising from the ashes. And I said this in my monthly astro forecast, which you should definitely check out. Link in the description box below. I also did a live yesterday with Rob Blackstorm and the Moon Mama, Monique Ruffin. And I spoke about how Pluto retrograde is really about setting fire to certain things in your life. The thing with Pluto, I keep saying that Pluto is profound change. It's also change of a very permanent kind of nature. It's not a change today and then go back to the old thing that you're doing. It's like severing ties completely, changing completely, right? And so there are some things that we need to set fire to in our lives. Contrary to popular belief, I am of the opinion that sometimes some bridges need to be burned because they no longer serve us, or they're toxic, or they keep pulling us back into the past and are hindering us from moving into the future. And so with this particular retrograde, this is setting fire to certain things in your life so you can rise from the ashes of those fires and have a better future. Okay, so this may be a time of very personal inner work, because Pluto's going retrograde in Aquarius, at least for the month of May. And Aquarius is all about improvement and innovation. So when directed inward, right, this is an energy of what can I improve in my life? What can I make better? What needs to change so that it operates better, or that so that I operate better? Okay. All of those things are sort of questions that you're going to be asking yourself while Pluto is retrograde. And Pluto is retrograde for 5 months. Okay. So it started on May 1st, and Pluto will go direct on October 10th. So we have a good portion of this year where we are doing that inner work. But again, this inner work is geared toward the future. All right. So I guess that's it for Monday. So let's keep it moving. All right, so then next, I should say yesterday, Tuesday, we had the moon moving into Libra, and you will see the moon at 0 degrees Libra, which is at the upper right-hand corner of the chart. All right, so Libra is the relationship sign. It's all about the other. It's how we relate to other people. Okay. So when the moon is in Libra, it's a time when you may feel like you don't want to be alone, or maybe a time where you feel like you want to be part of something. Okay. This is a great time whenever the moon is in Libra. It's a great time for cooperative activities, working together with people, even if it's just getting together with friends, hanging out with people. The moon in Libra loves that. That's where we derive our emotional satisfaction. It's in other people. It's with other people. So it's a time to sort of be friendly, charismatic. It's a time to be social, okay? Now, the moon is in the waxing gibbous phase, okay? We are making our way to the full moon, which also happens to be an eclipse this week. So this week, the moon is like reaching a crescendo. And when the moon is in the waxing gibbous phase, it's like we take those last action steps. This is the time where we step things up in terms of moving towards the things that we want to manifest. And so when the moon is in Libra, the message is kind of really simple. It reminds us that a lot of times we can go faster alone, but farther together. Okay. And so a lot of times it's really important to have people who can help you, whether it's help you physically, help you mentally, be a shoulder to cry on, be an ear to listen. Like, you don't have to go through everything alone. And the moon in Libra always reminds us of this. So again, it's a great time for group activities, cooperation, or even just hanging out with friends and being social. All right. It's a light, I wouldn't say it's a lighthearted kind of moon, but it's a moon where, again, it's great to hang out. It's great to chill. And it's great to socialize with other people. All right. So that's Tuesday. Let's keep it moving. All right, so on Thursday, we've got Venus square Neptune. Venus is currently at 26 degrees Gemini, and Neptune is at 26 degrees Pisces, okay? And then we have the moon moving into Scorpio. Still going to be in the waxing gibbous phase, and you'll see the moon at 0 degrees Scorpio. All right, so let's discuss. So Venus square Neptune, it's not necessarily the most comfortable transit. This is one of those transits that may have you feeling like, let me not say that. This is one of those transits that may have you repeating old stories, repeating negative self-talk, because this particular transit lends itself to insecurities, okay? Especially if we're talking about Venus, maybe insecurities about how you look or how you present yourself, or maybe being overly focused on what other people think about you. Either way, it's one of those situations where you may not be feeling the best about yourself, okay? But here's the thing. Neptune always distorts reality. So whatever you're thinking about yourself, and I want you to pay attention to what I just said. I said whatever you're thinking about yourself, because Venus is in Gemini. Gemini is an air sign. It's all about thoughts and communication. Do not let what you think about yourself turn into how you feel about yourself, because Neptune is in Pisces. Pisces is a water sign. Water signs are all about emotions. You're really going to have to rein in your thoughts with this particular transit, because again, Neptune distorts reality. So you may look in the mirror and be like, oh, my skin looks horrible. Everyone is staring at me. My face looks crazy. I don't look good. I don't like how my body looks. And you think that that's why everyone is staring at you. And it's probably farthest from the truth. Again, because Neptune distorts reality, we may have a warped self-image that is not necessarily representative of reality. So keep that in mind, okay? It also may have you exhibiting a distorted image of your relationships. Because not only does Venus cover our appearance, but it also covers relationship. It governs relationships. So what you think is going on with your relationship may not be what is actually going on. Okay, that distortion can either be directed personally, individually, or with respect to a relationship. Venus also covers money, so this may also be reaching into your pocket as well. The way that you view or think about your financial situation or a financial situation may not necessarily be what the truth is. Okay, so this is a time where you should definitely not jump to conclusions. You shouldn't make any rash decisions or decisions based on how you feel, especially if they have to do with appearance, with relationships, or with money. Perfect example. You don't like how your hair is looking, and so you decide to go to the hairdresser and get a haircut. Like, don't do all that, especially if you're not feeling the best. Because again, you have a distorted self-image. So that haircut, not only may it not look good, but it also may not, it may not be the solution to how you're feeling. Okay. And this is, I don't necessarily like this transit in and of itself, but I also don't necessarily really like it in such close proximity to the eclipse. Because this is like, it's not even just how you look, right? Venus square Neptune can be a very superficial distortion, meaning that you look in the mirror that day and you're not necessarily pleased with how you look. With the eclipse in Scorpio looming and that energy sort of permeating around us already, this may be like, oh my God, my whole life I've been ugly. Oh my gosh, like it's going to trigger some deeply seated emotions, some deeply seated insecurities, okay? And so this, you may find that by the end of the week, you're just not feeling yourself. You're not feeling the best. You're not feeling that great, okay? Now, it all depends on where this is going down in your chart. This may have nothing to do with your appearance. Like I said, it could have everything to do with money, relationships, whatever. Take a look at your chart and see where this is actually taking place. But just understand that things are not necessarily what they seem. And rather than making decisions or moving based on what you're thinking or feeling in the moment, just ride it out. Let it pass. Do not make any major decisions. Unless you feel comfortable doing so, of course, right? Anything that I say, use your discernment to see how it resonates or relates to you. But this is when you're going to want to like pause for a second and really think about it. Check in with yourself to see if your thoughts and your emotions are representative of how you really feel about the situation, okay? But like I said, I would ride it out. I would not make any major decisions or any major moves because this is, it's just not going to feel the best. And then we've got the moon moving into Scorpio that day. So again, whatever is coming to the surface may be things that have been seriously repressed, maybe things that you've buried. I guess that would be the same thing as seriously repressed. Deeply seated things, things that, especially if you've been working on things but haven't really been putting in the work, these things may be coming back around. And by things, I mean emotions, insecurities, fears, all of those things. Okay. But again, what I like about this energy is that it's all about bringing things to the surface so that you can acknowledge them and release them. Something that's very interesting, and I'm about to go on a little tangent, so get comfy. One of the questions I've heard a lot and have been asked a lot is, when they tell you you have to do the work, like do the inner work, what does that mean? Right? Like, how do you really process emotions? What does that actually look like? It's simple in theory and in explaining it, but in practice it can be quite difficult. Emotions, all they need is acknowledgement. Okay? Especially emotions that we've buried deep under the rug, deep in the closet, right? They just want to see the light of day, because the nature of emotions is that they come up to be dissipated. That is the nature of any emotion. However, when you repress emotions or you don't process them, they stay with you. And typically they stay with you and manifest as some sort of physical ailment, because the emotion gets stored or trapped or stuck in a certain part of your body. So that knee pain that you're having, it's not just the fact that you have a physical knee pain. That stems from a stored emotion that didn't have the opportunity to rise and then dissipate. So to do the work, to do the emotional work, it's really about releasing that energy, allowing yourself to feel it, acknowledge it. Acknowledging it doesn't mean that you relive it, that you re-traumatize yourself. It's not necessarily the case that you have to be immersed in that emotion. You're kind of just observing it without shame or without judgment. And by doing so, you allow that emotion to do what it naturally does, which is to come up and then dissipate. That's how you do the work. And it could be something as simple as, in the moment, you acknowledge how you're feeling. Have you ever done that? Like, has anything ever triggered you? And in that moment, you were conscious enough to stop and say, okay, what am I feeling? Acknowledging what you're feeling sort of makes sense of how you're feeling. And then do you notice that after that, you don't necessarily feel it anymore? That's doing the work. So Thursday may be a day where you're doing that. Or Thursday may be a day where you have plenty of opportunities to do that, because maybe you're triggered, maybe your insecurities are flaring up, or maybe you are just really in your feelings. Perfect opportunity to do the work, perfect opportunity to do shadow work, perfect opportunity to rid yourself not only of emotional pain, but maybe even physical pain as well. All right. So it's Thursday. Let's keep it moving. All right, my loves. So we get to Friday, and Friday, you see this clusterfuck of planets at the top of the chart, right? Lots going on. Friday is the heavy hitter day of the week. All right. But I feel like Friday, it's going to be a mixed bag, but I feel like it's going to be pretty good. All right. So first, we've got that lunar eclipse in Scorpio. Sun is at 14 degrees Taurus. Moon is at 14 degrees Scorpio. Then we've got Venus at 27 degrees Gemini. And we've got Jupiter at 27 degrees Aries. All right. So let us discuss. First, let's talk about the lunar eclipse. Okay. So lunar eclipses always happen at the full moon. We are experiencing a full moon in Scorpio. Okay. So it's going down at 1:33 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And it's going down at 14 degrees Scorpio. Okay. 14 degrees in terms of the numerology boils down to a number 5. And 5 is the number of change. Okay. Change is one of the characteristics of Scorpio, because Scorpio is ruled by Pluto. This is change of the permanent kind. This is transformation. This is death to rebirth. This is resurrection type energy, right? And it's resurrection of things that may be deep within our subconscious, deeply seated fears, insecurities, all the stuff that I was talking about before. But it's a time of change and adaptability. Because, as I've said before, eclipses, it's the universe's way of rearranging things in our lives. So it requires us to be adaptable. The last thing that you want to be at this time is narrow-minded, closed-minded, and resistant, because it's not only going to make things harder, it's only delaying the inevitable. It's almost, the universe is kind. Sometimes it may not feel that way, but the universe is kind. Universe will give you plenty of opportunities to change. It's like the universe will be like, hey, we got to change this. All right, just letting you know. Then we'll come back later. Hey, have you changed that yet? All right, you haven't? All right, well, why don't you get to it? Only after a couple of tries will the universe snatch your fucking edges, because you are just being completely resistant, okay? And I know, myself included, I've experienced that plenty of times in life where I feel like I want to hold on to things for dear life. The thought of losing something, the thought of letting something go is not only scary, but super uncomfortable, right? And in our society, we are conditioned to believe that endings can be bad. Endings are scary. Endings are sad, right? And not to say that endings cannot be those things or don't elicit those emotions, but endings can be super beautiful, especially when you think about what's right around the corner. I know there are things in life that I have held on to for dear life so tightly that my hands are almost bleeding because I'm holding on so tight. I really don't want to let go. And then finally the universe is like, Mel, like, I'm about to knock that shit out of your hand if you don't let go. And I'm like, all right, fine. And then, you know what follows next? Relief, joy, happiness, and excitement. And anticipation for what is to come. And to be honest, and I'm not even saying this on some bullshit, I'm not saying this to be cliche or to be some love and light. What I lost usually was nowhere near as good as what I gained. Okay. So if you feel like you're in the throes of things not working out, of feeling like you're being pushed to get rid of something, to end something, right? Follow that feeling, follow that prompting. It's for a good reason. The universe, our spirit guides, God, whoever you believe in that is beyond this realm, they can see a lot farther than we can. Our limited vision makes us, a lot of times has us making choices that aren't necessarily bad, right? Because our choices are in alignment with where we're trying to go, what we're trying to do, etc. But sometimes spirit, you know how I said before that this is a time when you kind of sit back, we co-create with spirit, and this is a time where you sit back and you let spirit take the wheel, right? Usually that's because spirit sees farther than you. And spirit is like, you've been doing well. I see you. All right, I see you doing your thing. But listen, let me take over because I'm about to make it better. I'm about to give you what you want. That there are pieces that need to be put together for the things that we want. And we don't realize it because we don't see it, because we're limited to this physical body, right? Many times if you're tapped in, you could see it. You know what I'm talking about, but you can't see it. So you're like, it doesn't exist. Meanwhile, spirit is moving mountains. Spirit is changing people's minds. Spirit is working on people, working on situations, creating things, literal things for your particular manifestation. That's why it is so important to trust the process. That's why it's so important to follow your intuition. That's why it's so important to check in with God, check in with your spirit team, figure out where they are trying to take you. Because like I said, they know, right? Do you remember, if you are someone who drives, you remember when you were first learning how to drive and you kind of got the hang of it, but you were a little shaky? You always had like a parent or a teacher that was teaching you how to drive, that was giving you directions, right? When you're driving, that's what it's like. Your spirit team is literally giving you directions, telling you, okay, go easy on the brake or put your indicator on, right? But then at a certain point, that teacher, that parent, they get in the car and then they drive. And you notice how much better they drive. They've been doing it long enough. They know these roads. They know the terrain, right? That is how we work with spirit. And so That's why this time is so important to surrender. It's so important to and I love eclipses because I'm like, cool, I can chill for right now and let the universe surprise you. I think that a lot of times we think the surprises are bad, right? There are times in life when we don't get the best surprises. But if you wait in joyful anticipation of what spirit has for you, you will never be disappointed. Usually it will exceed your expectations if you fully trust and if you fully let go. And so that's what this eclipse is about, okay? It's really about, surprises, right? Because the sun is going to be conjunct Uranus. So this can be, in the usual way of Uranus, this could be actual surprises, things happening suddenly, but it could also be flashes of insight and moments of clarity. Remember I said before, because this eclipse is going down in Scorpio, it's about the truth being revealed. And it's almost like you may find that things in your 3D reality are going to confirm what you've been feeling, right? It's almost like your intuition has been telling you about something, and then this eclipse is going to be like, yo, I was right. My intuition was on point. I understand this. This makes sense to me. I understand why this transpired. Even further, remember when I said before, this is a story. This eclipse is one of the final chapters in a story that's been playing out since 2021. And I feel like this eclipse is going to show us or show you why this situation came into your life, why you went through this situation. It's almost like you're going to be able to make sense of this situation. It's that aha moment where it's like, oh, I finally get it. I understand. Now, for me, I'm not going to go too much into my business, but I will give you a little bit of how this particular eclipse cycle has been playing out for me. There was something that happened right at the eclipse in October of 2021, and something that I did not really like. It was a very difficult situation for me, and it left me feeling kind of sad and very bewildered. I was like, why is this happening? Like things were going so well, and then boom, something ended. And I was like, what the hell is going on? I don't understand. And throughout 2021 and 2022, things have played out in my personal life as it pertains to me that have strengthened me, that have had me doing different things, stretching myself, growing, learning new things, all of this stuff. And it wasn't until recently, I want to say about a month ago, but definitely since last week, I have gotten so much clarity on the situation. I understand why it happened. I understand the reasoning behind it. I also understand what that situation means for my future. Okay. So again, like I said before, I wanted you to remember what happened around the end of 2021. This is going to be a great time for you to journal, for you to reflect on how that story has played out. But most importantly, what has it taught you? What have you learned? What information has it given you that you can take into the future? Because we are about to embark on a new eclipse cycle. Okay. Every time we have an eclipse cycle, the lunar nodes, the north and the south node, are in two specific signs for 18 months. And it's like we have tag team eclipses over the course of that 18 months. During that eclipse cycle, that's when the universe rearranges things in your life. So every eclipse cycle, a different area of your life is being rearranged and it's being put together, right? And so that's why I said we're at the final chapters of this eclipse cycle. So it's time for you to figure out what this was about, what lessons have you learned from it, and what of those lessons can you take into the future. This may also be a time where you appreciate the journey, because apart from full moons being a time of uncovering things coming to light, it's also a time when things come to a culmination. And anytime something comes to a culmination, something comes to fruition, inherent in that is the energy of gratitude and appreciation. Perhaps who you were or where you were at the end of 2021 is completely different than who you are and where you are right now. And so this may be an eclipse where you are like, wow, I've really grown. Or wow, I've really moved forward. Or wow, I've really accomplished this. Or I'm on my way to accomplishing this. So it's maybe a time of appreciation and gratitude, right? As to how things have changed. Remember I said this eclipse is going down at 14 degrees Scorpio. 14 numerologically is the number 5. 5 is about change. Some change has occurred during that time. And it's time for you to assess what that change is, okay? The moon is also going to be opposite Mercury retrograde, so deep introspection, especially with things related to self-worth, self-esteem, all that good kind of stuff, all right? So that's the eclipse in a nutshell. Again, I wouldn't necessarily take to heart anyone who's fear-mongering or saying, oh my gosh, it's going to be crazy. Here's the thing. If you are watching this, it is safe to say that you are someone who's been doing the work. I don't necessarily get the sense that my viewers are people who are really new or green. And if you are, that's perfectly fine. So I say that to say that this eclipse, if you've been doing some sort of work on some sort of level, it's not going to be catastrophic. It's for people who haven't done any sort of work, people who have not taken accountability for themselves, people who are not conscious or aware of themselves. They're not self-aware that this particular eclipse can be very jarring and very crazy and erratic. But by all means, I feel like this particular eclipse is going to be very eye-opening in a good way. All right. So what's also going to make this eclipse energy very interesting is the fact that Venus is going to be sextile to Jupiter. Now, when all of the planets in the solar system, Venus and Jupiter are known as benefic planets, meaning that they exude positive or beneficial energy. So the fact that Venus is sextile Jupiter means that we have the opportunity for possibility. It's not going to just fall into our laps. It's going to be something that we're going to have to put a little effort in order to see or experience this positivity. And so how I feel about, the eclipse and Venus sextile Jupiter happening on the same day is that it almost feels like a blessing in disguise sort of energy, if you look at it that way. Remember the analogy I said before, you're rearranging your room and before, you're done, you kind of create more of a mess before things get into their new places, right? And you may have the tendency to be like, oh my God, things are falling apart. I don't know what's happening. This crazy situation just came about, or I'm feeling these really intense emotions and I don't understand. The presence of Venus sextile Jupiter is like, listen, there's a blessing in this. Whatever's going on, I don't care what it looks like. I really don't. Imagine your worst case scenario. The presence of Venus sextile Jupiter means that something good is going to come out of this craziness or this messiness or this situation that seems like it's the end of the world or that it's death, doom, and destruction, right? Something positive is going to happen. There's going to be some good fortune that comes out of this. You just have to be able to find it. It's almost like trying to find the silver lining. A cloud with the silver lining, or whatever that phrase is. It's not going to be smack dab in your face. It's going to require a little bit of a reflection for you to be like, you know what? I can spin this around so that it's a better situation. Or wow, that may have been crazy, but it really showed me something that I could use going forward. Okay. So it's going to require a bit of reflection on your part, and being able to transmute the energy of craziness, of maybe despair, of sadness, of anything that is not necessarily pleasurable or favorable to you. Understand that it's probably a blessing in disguise. So look at it that way, okay? And even if you don't have anything crazy happening, I feel like it's just going to be goodness on goodness. So if you have this aha moment, this moment of clarity, finally understanding the pieces of the puzzle and seeing the puzzle coming into focus, right? I feel like Venus sextile Jupiter is just going to add positivity to that, right? You're going to either feel really good about it, or it's going to be something very valuable, or maybe even something lucrative that comes out of this aha moment. But regardless, whatever happens, understand, understand, overstands, okay, that it's actually a blessing in disguise, or maybe it's a blessing out in the open, but either way, it's a blessing. All right. So that's Friday. Let's keep it moving. All right, so on Saturday, we have the moon moving into Sagittarius, and you'll see that at the bottom left-hand portion of the chart, the moon will be at 0 degrees Sagittarius, okay? So I like this. I always love when the moon is in Sagittarius because it gives us this energy of optimism. It has us seeing the bigger picture. So basically in tandem with everything that I've been saying about the eclipse, about Venus sextile Jupiter, this is looking towards the future with optimistic eyes. This is understanding why certain things had to happen. Although it may not feel great in the moment, understand that things will get better. The entire puzzle will come into focus. You'll see the bigger picture, and you're motivated to not only look to the future, but understand the situation a bit better. Okay. So I feel like it's just this feeling of goodness, this feeling of understanding, this feeling of finally getting it that I think that we're going to have when the moon moves into Sagittarius. Okay. Now, here's the thing, because we've crossed the threshold of the full moon, and of course, this full moon happens to be an eclipse. By the time the moon gets to Sagittarius on Saturday, it's in the waning phase. And the waning phase of the moon is always about letting go. It's always about getting rid of what no longer serves us. So with the moon in Sagittarius, you're optimistic about the future. You see the bigger picture. And so with Pluto retrograde and Mercury retrograde having us looking inward, this is a great time to get rid of the things that are not in alignment with that big picture. Okay. And I feel like for some, the eclipse will have rattled your life so that what isn't serving you is probably going to come up to the surface. And with the moon in Sagittarius, you're like, you know what? I really don't need this. I understand that I'm going over here, or I'm about to accomplish X, Y, and Z, or I'm working towards this. I don't need these things. These things could be emotions. They could be places. They could be people. They could be situations that are just not serving you. And being optimistic about the future, you're going to be like, you know what? I don't need these. I can get rid of these. Or I can end this, or put this to the side, or put this on pause, or however it plays out for you or makes sense for you in your life. I feel like you're going to feel optimistic and upbeat about it, and you're going to be able to look toward the future happily and faithfully and optimistically. All right, let's keep it moving. And then finally, we close out the week with Venus entering Cancer. So I kind of alluded to this before, but you'll see at the top hand portion of the chart, Venus will be at 0 degrees Cancer beginning on Sunday. All right. So I kind of alluded to this before, but Venus in Cancer, it's all about feeling good. Not even just feeling good lovey-dovey. It's definitely about love. It's about affection, but it's more so about devotion. It's kind of like when you have a healthy relationship with your mother or a mother figure, and how you kind of are devoted to her, how she may make you feel protected, safe, all of those things. The basic needs, the basic emotional needs that we have are highlighted when Venus is in Cancer, okay? And when Venus in Cancer, we look to our relationships in order to have our basic emotional needs met. So when it comes to shelter, clothing, food, warmth, protection, we look to our relationships to provide that for us. Okay. So it may be a slightly emotional time, especially if you find that your needs are not being met in your relationships. However, it can be a time that is loving, that is nurturing, and that is very protective. Okay. Again, it's about being warm and devoted. We show our love through devotion, okay, and through care and concern. So as opposed to, let's say, Venus in Pisces. Venus in Pisces is lovey-dovey. It could also be kind of touchy-feely, like playing footsies kind of thing. Venus in Cancer is like caring and concern. Venus in Cancer is like getting a big hug or getting a kiss on the forehead. It's endearing. It shows that someone cares about you, that someone's concerned about you, right? if you are still blessed enough to have your mother or a mother figure in your life, it's one of those particular transits that makes you appreciate those things. Like, you may be a grown ass person, right? But maybe your mom calls to check on you. Or maybe your mom sends you a care package, or maybe she cooks for you or does something like that. Venus in Cancer, that's how you show people love. You show people love by showing that you care, showing that you're concerned about them. Okay, so these may be the things that come up while Venus is in Cancer. And it's interesting that Venus in Cancer is going to coincide with Mother's Day. Now, Sunday is not Mother's Day, but Venus will be in Cancer during Mother's Day. And I don't know if that holiday has anything to do with the astrology, because Venus typically tends to be in Cancer around this time of year. But however, Venus in Cancer coincides with Mother's Day. So you may be feeling that energy a lot more at this time, or it may be an energy that's at the forefront of your thoughts. It's also important to practice compassion with yourself, because this may not be an easy transit for some, especially if you have issues with your mother, or your mother is no longer with you, or that mother-like energy doesn't necessarily have to come from a mother or even a woman, but that mothering type energy is going to be very heavy, potent, and present when Venus is in Cancer. So practice compassion with yourself if the issue of mothering and nurturing, or the issues related to your basic emotional needs, whether they're being met or not, is triggering for you during this time. Okay. But regardless, if you do find yourself triggered, practice things that allow you to feel safe, that allow you to feel cared for, even if you are the one that's caring for yourself. All of us need to be cared for. Again, whether it's through ourselves or through our relationships. And I feel like Venus in Cancer is going to be the transit that brings this to our attention, whether it's to appreciate it or whether it's to ameliorate it. But I feel like this is something that's going to be present throughout the month of May. All right. All right, my love. So that is pretty much the week in a nutshell. All right. And so now, real quick, as always, I'm going to be pulling some cards by sign for messages for the week. All right. And as you may or may not know, I do these by sign. However, whatever message resonates with you resonates, whether it's your sun, your moon, your rising, your Venus, your north node, doesn't matter. If the message resonates, it resonates. All right. So as always, we start at the beginning. And so we will start with Aries. Let's see what we got for Aries for this week. All right, Aries, we've got the Four of Cups. All right. Some of you are feeling very bored. It's this energy I'm feeling of like this things bubbling under the surface. Okay. And so I believe that Mars is still in Cancer. And so things that you want to do, things that you want to be direct with, you aren't necessarily getting the opportunity to do so. You feel like you're being stifled, or you feel like your energy is being muted. And in doing so, you are super duper bored. Like, you're just like, ugh, this again, or, I'm really not interested in this. For some, I'm hearing like even like your sex drive, your libido is kind of low right now. And Spirit is like, you can't be on 100 all the time. This is a time for rest. You guys are fired up. You guys can be very active. You guys can be very, I'm hearing excitable. And so this current transit, or this season that you're going through right now, where you're feeling bored or where you're feeling stifled, don't look at it as I'm being limited. Look at it as it's a time for me to rest. It's time for me to just chill. There's going to be plenty of times for me to go. But right now it's time to just chill. All right. And so that's what you're being guided to do right now. All right. Okay. Next up, we've got Taurus. Let's see what we've got for Taurus for this week. Taurus, we've got the Devil. All right, Taurus. So you are experiencing either a harsh lesson right now, or there is a certain attachment in your life that is being emphasized. Look at the imagery of this card. These two people are chained to Baphomet, basically, right? It's being grounded. It's being stuck. It can also represent like obsessive behavior, or behaviors that may not be the best for you, things that trap you. And I feel like you're learning an important lesson about that now. You're learning a lesson about how this particular relationship or this particular situation has kept you stuck. So I feel like this particular eclipse is going to be very eye-opening with respect to what you've been attached to, who you've been chained to, and why. The most important thing is why. And I think like you're going to have a very serious moment of clarity. And when you figure out the why, that's when you're going to be able to make the appropriate moves to either separate for this person or like sever ties completely. Okay. All right. Next up, we've got Gemini. Let's see what we've got for Gemini. All right, Gemini. We've got the King of Pentacles. So money is definitely on your mind this week, but money in the sense of money management. This could be about like a nest egg, saving, investment. Typically, Gemini, you guys are very much concerned about transactions. How can I get more money now? What can I do in the present to make money? But I feel like this eclipse is showing you like, at times you have to get out of that hand-to-mouth transactional kind of thought process. And you really have to think more long-term, more stability-wise. It's not to say that you don't think about that at all, but I feel like this week there's going to be a shift in how you think. And you're going to be thinking, perhaps with respect to a particular situation, you're going to be thinking long-term, thinking about how I can create a nest egg, how I can create an empire maybe, and what steps you may have to take to get there, and understanding that this is a marathon, not a sprint. Okay. So an important lesson is to be learned this week concerning money and longevity. Okay. That was Gemini. So now we are up to Cancer. All right, Cancer, we've got the Six of Swords. So you guys are moving into a better headspace. There was something that you had on your mind for a while. There may have been a part of your story that was very tumultuous. You may have been thinking the worst about something, or identifying, I'm hearing like as a victim, or identifying as someone who lost out on something. And finally, you're moving away from that way of thinking. Like you're understanding that story or that narrative doesn't serve you, and you're starting to be nicer to yourself, I'm hearing, especially with how you think about yourself and how you speak of yourself and to yourself. I feel like you're moving into much calmer waters. Things aren't going to be as tumultuous. And I feel like you're going to have clarity of thought and direction. Whatever story you were telling yourself, it kind of had you directionless or kind of feeling lost or aimless. And I feel like this clarity of thought is going to set your boat, set your sails in the right direction. And that direction is a lot more positive one. Okay. So try not to focus too much on where you've been, but more so focus more on where you're going. Okay. That was Cancer. Next up, we've got Leo. Let's see what we've got for Leo for this week. All right, Leo, we've got the Queen of Pentacles. All right. You guys are focused a lot on your worth. Some of you, I'm hearing like some of you are telling someone like, listen, like that's not worth my time. Or understanding what your time is really worth, what your energy is really worth. Some of you, I'm hearing like you're going to be conserving your energy, meaning like people that you would entertain, people that you would give your time to, you're realizing that that is sort of a waste of your time, maybe even a waste of your money. Your value, your worth is super important to you right now. And I see you valuing that above anything else. So maybe you have people that want to hang out, but you know that you could spend your time much better either working on your business or hanging out with different people. Or maybe you are deciding to dedicate your time to learning things rather than spending your money on shopping or going out to eat. You're putting that money towards a course or like a webinar or something. There's something about your self-worth, your self-value that you're focused on, whether it's how you spend it or how you build it up. So I see that this particular eclipse is going to show you everything that you're worth. Okay. So next up, we've got Virgo. Let's see what we've got for Virgo for this week. All right, Virgo, we've got the Seven of Cups. So there's a bit of confusion here. I see it's a good confusion though. Some of you are being presented with lots of options. Like you can go in a million and one directions, and some of these directions seem very lucrative. They seem very like they would fulfill you emotionally. However, some of these options, some of these directions you can go in are complete bullshit. Complete waste of time. And so I feel like this particular eclipse is going to bring up the fact that you've got a lot of options, but it's also going to test your discernment. Some of you need to discern what is worth your time, what is worth your energy, and what isn't. Some things appear really valuable on the surface, and then underneath there really is nothing there. And I feel like Spirit is like, I want you to be able to discern which of these options, which of these choices really makes sense for you, which are truly aligned with you. So it's almost like a twofold thing. Number one, you're figuring out who you are, who you want to be, and then which options align with who you are and who you want to be. Okay. But above all else, I'm hearing discernment. So this is going to be an eclipse where discernment is going to be a major theme for you. Okay. That was Virgo. Let's get into Libra. All right, Libra, we've got the Six of Cups. Libra, y'all want that old thing back, okay? When it comes to relationships, of course, you guys are the relationship sign. You are thinking about a relationship from the past. There's something that you want to rekindle. There's something that you want to, I'm hearing reinvestigate. For some, you may have had a relationship on your mind for the longest time, right? But I'm hearing reinvestigate because it's almost like you want to see if that relationship lives up to the imagination that you have of it. I'm getting the sense that, okay, I'll give you an example. Let's say there's someone that you dated 6 years ago, and for some reason they've been on your mind like crazy, right? And you're thinking about how the relationship used to be and what it could be, right? But you know, a lot of times we tend to romanticize the past. The relationship could have been shitty, but in our minds, it was really good. So you want to reinvestigate this to see if this relationship really lives up to what you think about it in your mind. And I'm getting the sense that for some of you, in revisiting this, in reinvestigating this, you're going to realize that this relationship is not what you think it is, for better or for worse. But I feel like your perception of it is going to be definitely different than the reality of it, okay? You also need to practice discernment. You also need to figure out why. I'm seeing a big question mark, like why this person, why this relationship, why do I feel this way? Okay. Investigating. Remember, this eclipse is going down in Scorpio. Scorpio is the sign of investigation. So it behooves you to do a little investigating, whether it's talking to that person, looking at their social media. I mean, don't be a creep about it. Okay. You get what I'm trying to say, but really look into this and understand why. Okay. Speaking of Scorpio, next up, we've got Scorpio. Let's see what we've got for Scorpio for this week. All right, Scorpio, we've got the King of Wands. You guys are feeling extra confident. There is something that you've set your sights on. For some, I'm hearing it's like a business. It's like some kind of endeavor like that, but you've got your sights set on it and you're like, yes, I am going after this, like with all of your energy, with all of your might, okay? You are looking at this thing favorably. You are looking, not only you looking at it favorably, you're feeling like now is the time. I get the sense that in the past you've been told, whether you've been told spiritually, whether you've been told by other people, or whether it's just the way that the circumstances have played themselves out. It's almost like you've been told that then was not the time. You really wanted to do this, but you realized that wasn't the time. And I feel like the time is now. Okay. Now, by now, I don't necessarily mean on Friday at the eclipse. I'm hearing like, remember I said before, this eclipse is closing out a particular eclipse cycle. As this new cycle begins, later this year, it will be time to develop this thing that you're passionate about, this thing that you want to go after. So keep in mind, well, you're not necessarily a sign that's impulsive, but start to get ready. Start to put things into action. Start putting money away, I'm hearing, in order to get this thing off the ground, get this thing started as the year progresses. Okay? That was pretty cool. Next up, we've got Sagittarius. Let's see what we've got for Sag for this week. We've got two. We've got strength and we've got we've got strength and we've got the Page of Swords. All right, Sag. So you guys, you know how I was saying Libra's got to do some investigating, right? You guys are doing some research, some recon, if you will, okay? Something that you're very passionate about, you're really looking into. Although for you, I don't feel like it's a relationship. There's something new that you're trying to learn. Could be something that you're passionate about. Could be something that really is going to allow you to express yourself. I feel like it has a creative element to it. So let's say it's like painting. Maybe you're watching a whole bunch of YouTube videos, or maybe you decided to take a class. But whatever it is, I feel like you're doing research. You're gathering information on what this thing is. For some, it's a talent that you already have, and getting more information is just going to strengthen that talent. Okay, so whether it's getting information, whether it's practicing, I see you guys building up your talents, building up your creativity, and doing the research, practicing, doing all of that stuff. I feel like by the time this eclipse is over and the energy subsides, I think that you guys are going to be in a really good position to either make more money off your talents or develop your talents further. Okay, doesn't sound half bad if you ask me. Next up, we've got Capricorn. So let's see what we've got for Capricorn for this week. Right, Capricorn, we've got the Four of Pentacles. You guys are holding on to something for dear life. Some of you, I hear you're being very miserly this week, and Spirit is like, I don't necessarily see a problem for that. However, if you are being miserly, if you are being cheap, if you are being stingy, make sure that the intent behind it is not fear. If you know that you want to save up for something, if you know that you're trying to ride this economic wave or whatever it is, do it from a place of strength. Saying like, yes, I'm working towards this, so I'm holding on to my money. Don't say, I'm afraid of losing my money. I'm afraid of investing, so I'm holding on to my money. Do not fuel whatever this is with fear, okay? But yeah, you guys are holding on to something for dear life. If it's not money, there's something that like you don't want someone to have, or I am getting this feeling of fear. Like some of you don't want something to be taken away. Some of you are holding on for dear life. And remember the example I gave before of myself, where I was holding on so tightly to the point where Spirit kind of really pushed me to let go. So Capricorn, for some of you, I feel like there's going to be a letting go. There's going to be a release during this week or during this eclipse, right? That not going to feel good in the moment. It's going to have you feeling quite uncomfortable. However, I feel like it's for your highest good. Okay. So if you are being urged to release something, or even if you, because a lot of times we don't necessarily get the message that we need to release something. We feel the pain of holding on to it even tighter. And if you find that that's the case, if you find that you're fighting, if you find that you're being met with resistance while you're trying to hold on to dear life for something, that is an indication that it is time to let it go. Okay, so keep that in mind. All right, next up, we've got Aquarius. Let's see what we've got for Aquarius. Okay, Aquarius, we've got the Empress. So you guys are sitting very pretty this week. I get the sense that you guys are feeling abundant. You guys are feeling accomplished. Remember I said with full moons, they either uncover things, right? Like truths revealed, or it's the culmination of something. So I feel like for you, Aquarius, this is the culmination of something. It could be financial. It could have to do with children. Maybe your children have an accomplishment or you accomplish something with or for your children, but you're feeling very good. You're feeling in a place of stability, of abundance, and you're just appreciative and grateful. Or Spirit is saying you should be appreciative and grateful because you're in a very good position right now. So enjoy it and be thankful for it. Okay? Short, sweet, and to the point for Aquarius. And last but certainly not least, we've got Pisces. Let's see what we've got for Pisces for this week. Pisces, we've got the 8 of Wands. So there is some very fast moving energy coming your way. For some, I feel like because this eclipse is all about truths being revealed, I'm seeing you guys getting a lot of downloads, getting a lot of messages, a lot of aha moments. It's like the universe is like pummeling you with messages, with synchronicities, with downloads, with signs, symbols. There's a lot to take in at this particular eclipse, okay? And don't be in a space where you're like, I need to figure everything out. I need to understand what this message is. Take it as it comes, because sometimes messages need to develop over time. Sometimes Spirit may breadcrumb us, right? We get a bit of a message here, then a couple of days later, we get another part of it. Then a couple of weeks later, we get another part. Be open and receptive, but don't be neurotic about it. Don't try to figure out every little dream. Don't try to figure out every little message in the moment. Let things unfold. You have all the knowledge that you need. These signs, these downloads, they're merely confirmation to what you already know. And if you find that you don't understand what it is, give it some time. Meditate on it, and all will be revealed to you in divine timing. All right. All right, my loves. So that concludes this edition of the weekly Astro Forecast. I sincerely hope that you were able to get at least one important piece of information that you can use going forward into this week. All right. So again, I did this on Wednesday because I had technical difficulties on Monday. However, next week we are back to our regularly scheduled time, which is Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All right. If you would like to book a personal reading with me or order an astrology report and consultation, all of those links can be found in the description box below. Once again, thank you so much for tuning in. I wish you nothing but the best for the rest of this week and for this eclipse. And I will see you next time, my loves. All right. Take care.